الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان.
Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Revelation Experience. I'm Meraj Mohiuddin, and today is going to be a fun day. I'm going to try to do something different that we have not done before, and I'm curious to hear responses from this and see if this is something that you enjoyed. You guys have worked really hard keeping track with me here. We have gone through the entire prologue. Remember, we talked about all of those, the Himyarites and the true Arabs and the story of Abraham and going all the way back to the story of Adam when we said, whoever follows my guidance will have nothing to fear, nor will you grieve. So we've covered all of that. Then we covered the story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, before his prophethood, before the age of 40. And then now we actually covered the first 3 years of the Quranic message. In the next few episodes, what we're going to do is stop talking about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and jump into the first 22 surahs that we believe were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, in the early Meccan period. Now, not all of these surahs were revealed in entirety in that time, but we're trying to do an approximate chronological study of the Qur'an. So we're taking a departure from the seerah and jump into the Qur'an for a few weeks. And before we do that, I thought it would be very interesting to just summarize everything that we have covered so far. But rather than me telling you in my own words, I thought I would read to you this incredible poem that is yet to be published, or will hopefully be published by the time some of you are hearing this now. This is a ode to the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, to his journey. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the author and the vision of this after I finish reading you some of these selected verses. So let me relate Muhammad's whole story in verse. The dazzling details are beyond enumeration. Please forgive me then if I only mention highlights, tales that drive me to the point of infatuation. O Muhammad, you are indeed the praised one of God. Your character exceeds my every expectation. O Prophet, how much I wish to meet you in my dreams. Verily, you are the most worthy of veneration. He is born to a very noble line of Quraysh, but his father's death leaves him without a position. His mother sends him away so that he could grow up strong. Outside the city, he'd escape the noise and tension. Without a father, the orphan couldn't afford much. Halima takes him in due to her destitution. One day in the desert, 2 angels open his chest. Halima is bewildered by the apparition. But certain miracles seem to occur to the boy. He's destined for greatness, is the prognostication. As a young shepherd, like every prophet before him, he is taught self-reliance. That's my supposition. And on the trade routes, a cloud follows him overhead. The miracle of Rahmah makes a strange impression. Is this the awaited one that the scriptures foretold? Bahira confirms it after interrogation. Keep him close to you, the monk advises his uncle. His own people will seek him out for persecution. Later in life, when he is first anointed Nabi, Waraqa would also give his full validation. Society was based on a Jahiliyyah code of seeking out your immediate retribution. Their view of rights had become a tribal gang culture, resulting in skirmishes without resolution. As a teenager, he witnessed a newfound ethics. This pact of chivalry is worth ratification. As a young man, he marries the merchant Khadija. She had been tipped off by biblical prediction. Jacob had said that Shiloh would take up the scepter and bring to Isma'il's tribe its reactivation. Always for fame and honor, the varying clans vie. Who would replace the black stone is the major question. They appeal to Al-Amin because he's known as fair. Lifting it in a sheet is his unique solution. Didn't an ancestor of his place the stone there? His own seerah sounds like a recapitulation. Why would he leave his family and escape to Hira? He is troubled by society's degradation, how they worship useless idols made of sticks and stone, how the rich abuse the poor in social predation, how the innocent infant can be buried alive, how he vows to stay away from such dissipation. Alone above the city of Mecca's raucous din, inside the cave, he'd be lost in deep meditation. Till Jibreel shakes him from sleep with a sharp command, Iqra. He falls in terror from this visitation. Across the horizon he sees the angel's wingspan. Iqra. And he is filled by divine inspiration. He runs to Khadija, who throws a cloak over him. He thought that he'd imagined the divine connection. Am I mad with heat stroke? Or am I possessed by jinn? Months go by without any communication, till God says, did we not support you as an orphan? You are a prophet of mine. This is no delusion. How can blazing poetry be spoken by a man who has no formal literary education? They'd never heard a profound message this clear before. Who has given him these lessons in elocution? No, this is a rehearsing of stories overheard. Jews and Christians accuse him of plagiarization. Ahl al-Kitab knows it is the truth deep in their hearts. They acknowledge the book's otherworldly oration. How can I describe the awesome weight of the Qur'an? This book shakes a mountain to its very foundation, veils upon veils of meaning like an onion peeled back. I cry from its most beautiful elaboration. After a few years of meeting in secret, he's told, host a large dinner to your clan's specification. The Qur'an says, warn your nearest relatives with care. But Abu Lahab expresses their apprehension. Awake, O sleepers of Quraysh, I'm here as your guide. Only teenage Ali accepts the invitation. He calls again to them from on top Mount Safa. Witness, I've given you a clear notification. If I told you that an army would attack you soon, would you now make the necessary preparation? I have been raised as a friend from amongst all of you. I've never been guilty of misappropriation. Perish you for wasting our time, says Abu Lahab. His uncle is moved by personal ambition. His useless money won't save him from a raging blaze. Both he and his wife are cursed for their incantations. While the Prophet knelt in prayer, they heaped on his back entrails of beasts and other foul contamination. Why can't we respond to critics in meaningful ways? We react violently to each cartoon aspersion. When Abu Lahab's wife insults him with mudhammam, Muhammad just laughs off the mispronunciation, deaf, dumb, and blind. The ignorant ones won't understand. The Prophet patiently withstands their fulmination. Muhammad is sent as a mercy to all mankind. Even with his foes, he does not wish their perdition. What about the slave tortured by a rock on his chest? Bilal's heartless owner feels no sense of contrition. Stop repeating, there's only one God, you useless wretch. I demand that you recant your recent admission. Before there was an adhan, Bilal cried out the call. Abu Bakr responds by quick manumission. What's the moral to learn from the early companions? If my heart forgets God, dhikr gives restitution. Reflect on the phrase, La ilaha illallah, how it starts with a la, a complete abnegation. My nafs first has to be cleared of any other gods before my mind can begin on His contemplation. So I hope you enjoyed those really eloquent and powerful words. You know, every time I read these words, I get a little bit emotional, which is interesting. I think I've read it so many times that it wouldn't affect me, but it affects me every time I read it. And hopefully that was a nice summary for you guys of, you know, some of the themes that we've covered, building up and recapturing the emotion that is going into this early Meccan period. These verses are actually a poem of several hundreds and hundreds of lines, written by none other than my older brother, in fact, Meraj Mohiuddin. He is a physician also, but also a literary prodigy, I would call him. He probably wouldn't want to be called that, but he is a playwright, a poet, a creative writer, and so forth. And so he is currently working on a collection of books on poetry. This is one of his books called the Burda, the Qasida of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And it is actually something that is in production right now to be printed soon. And I will give you updates on that when it actually comes out. I thought we would, end this with a few words from my brother, who will describe to you his journey studying the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and hopefully he can touch a little bit on what this has to do with your journey as well.
When my brother wrote this book, he had really rolled up his sleeves and got to work in this and had gotten really messy, and came out of this whole process having packaged it in this nice, neat book of beautiful pictures and glossaries and tables. But I personally knew that that wasn't the whole story, reading the book. I remember all the conversations that we were having as he was wrestling with different issues and some of the emotional highs and lows that he was going through, in his own life. And as I started reading through the book myself, passively, I realized I was missing something. I was missing those conversations. And sort of like working with wet clay, if the seerah is sort of wet clay, and my brother sort of packaged this textbook, I kind of looked at this material and figured if I really wanted to have mastery over it, and if I wanted it to truly transform me, I had to really roll up my sleeves and get dirty and think about it and work with it and work with the clay and kind of figure out my sort of angle on what I could create out of this material. And that's the only way I would remember it. If I just read it passively, it's not going to stick. But if I took the material and then I created something out of it that's new and unique and different, then it will stick. And for every line that I write, that's like an hour worth of reading. And then I had to make decisions about including this and not including that. So it reflects some of that work. And so I decided to create a poem. And in this case, the poem was a qasida. I've written another book of poems about the seerah, which is in the form of a ghazal. And these were two poetic forms, the qasida and the ghazal, that were well known to the Prophet, and the Prophet loved and appreciated in his own lifetime. And as I was digging deeper and reading about the story of the Prophet, I discovered his love for poetry and how important poetry was in the society of Mecca and Medina and all Arabia. And in fact, it was the brilliance of the Qur'an over these master poets of Arabia that wiped them away. That's what the miracle of the Qur'an was. And so when these Sahaba were moved to tears just by hearing a few lines, and I wasn't, I realized that it wasn't just the Arabic that I was missing, but it was just an appreciation for poetry. If I don't understand rhyme or meter or metaphor and juxtaposition and all these things, and even the literary allusions that they're talking about, there's no way that I would be able to access the Qur'an. And so I sort of thought that this would be a way for me to deepen my appreciation of Qur'an by exploring poetics, but then also sort of taking his story and sort of overlaying it over my own emotional experiences and seeing if I could come up with something new. For example, one of the moments that's touching to me is to discover that after the death of Khadija, the Prophet was raising daughters by himself for 2 years before he got married again. So he was a single dad. And I never thought about that before, but that resonated with me because, I had been in a situation like that as well. So I wanted to have that aspect of the emotional story come to life beyond just the graphs and the pictures. and the text. And for me, that was to do it in poetry. Why poetry? Again, I think it's a way to appreciate the Qur'an. I was introduced to it when I was in high school. My grandmother sat me down at the kitchen table one day and opened up a poem by Muhammad Iqbal, and it was called Shikwa and Jawabi Shikwa, which means complaint, in answer to the complaint. And so I just developed this appreciation and discovered there's such a rich tradition of poetry in every language: Turkish, Persian, Arabic, Urdu, Kashmiri, every language. And I kind of wanted to see that come to life in English, because that's the lingua franca of the world today. And I would love to be able to see traditional poetic forms like the ghazal and the qasida in English, but talking about Islamic themes, to kind of make the connection. And that's my way of trying to make that connection back to the Prophet. I can't write a qasida to the Prophet in Arabic, but I can write one in English. And this qasida is written for the Prophet. He's my real audience. And, part of my journey, sort of the closing end of this journey, having written these poems, was being able to go for Umrah and being able to recite a few of these lines there at the gravesite of the Prophet. And that was my way of sharing my love and appreciation for, him having transformed my story.
So I wanted to share his perspective with you, because what I found so powerful about his story is that, we all are inspired by the Prophet, peace upon him, because of his example. But we all have different routes, different ways that we can show our appreciation and give back to his legacy. And each of us has our own unique talent. We all have talents in very specific ways. The stuff that my brother does, I could never produce. And, some of my skill sets are challenging for him. And similarly, for all of you listening out there, you all have been given a very unique gift. It doesn't have to be artistic. It doesn't have to be literary. It can be in terms of caring for other people. It can be in terms of your personality. It could be in terms of your work. It could be in terms of anything that you feel makes you unique, some unique gift that God has given you. And I'm encouraging you all to share with each other, share in the comments below, and share with the world your gift with the world. How can you bring the Qur'an to life for people around you? And I will tell you right now, the best way to do that is just through our example, through just our mercy and our generosity and our care and consideration for each other, our neighbors, both Muslim and non-Muslim, for everybody around the world. So I thought I would just end with a kind of unique kind of spin on the typical episodes here, because we're going to start rolling up our sleeves and getting to some hard work. In the next episode, I'm going to be presenting to you a technique for approaching the Qur'an, because we're going to be jumping into 22 surahs here shortly. So I'm going to be presenting to you a technique about how I think it's really easy to access the transformative power of the Qur'an in a very stepwise, simple way. So we're going to jump into that in the next episode. Thanks so much for being a part of this. Also, it's helpful to me if you guys subscribe, hit that subscribe button there. It's helpful for me just to grow the channel and also to get our message out, and so that we can share the story of the Qur'an with the world. So feel free to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And again, always feel free to share this with anyone who you think might be interested or benefit from it. I can't wait to see you guys in the next episode, Insha'Allah. I will see you guys soon. Assalamu alaikum.
إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون أولئك أصحاب الجنة خالدين فيها جزاء بما كانوا يعملون.